Tonight, we investigate Harry and Meghan as the palace releases new records questioning their children's royal status.
Breaking news at the end of 2025.
Breaking news, and this one hits like a thunderclap at the very end of 2025. Quietly, without drama, without shouting, the palace moves. And suddenly, everything Harry and Meghan thought was still negotiable isn't. King Charles tightens the screws. Privileges reviewed, roles erased, titles no longer treated like birthright souvenirs, but like earned badges tied to service. And the message coming out of the palace corridors is ice cold and unmistakable. Blood alone no longer guarantees protection. While the public is distracted by holiday headlines, inside the monarchy, something sharper is happening. A system reset. You work, you represent. You don't, you fade. No sentiment, no nostalgia, just records, procedures, discipline. Prince Andrew becomes the silent warning sign, proof that history, status, even scandal tolerance have limits now. And in that climate, Harry and Meghan aren't just distant royals anymore. They're liabilities. That's when panic creeps in. Because suddenly, this isn't only about Harry and Meghan, it's about the children. Archie, Lilibet, titles, status, legacy. Everything they've built their post-royal identity on starts trembling. And according to multiple reports, Harry and Meghan don't wait passively, they prepare, strategize. Because losing those titles isn't symbolic, it's catastrophic. It shatters their narrative, their leverage, their future positioning. So instead of silence, they consider escalation. And then Meghan drops that video. A pregnancy-themed clip. Emotional, intimate, supposedly reflective. But instead of sympathy, the internet reacts with confusion, then suspicion, then outright ridicule. People don't just call it strange, they call it performative, forced, off. Old questions, once dismissed as fringe, come roaring back. Fake belly whispers, surrogacy rumors, Netflix optics. Suddenly, what was once conspiracy chatter turns mainstream. And here's where it gets dangerous. Because those whispers don't stop at aesthetics or behavior, they strike directly at legitimacy. Were those pregnancies real? Were they staged? And if there's even doubt, what does that mean for Archie and Lilibet's status, their place in the line of succession, their right to royal titles? Now, this isn't gossip. This is institutional risk. And the timing couldn't be worse. Because King Charles is already reviewing everything. Roles, titles, attachments. And now, legitimacy itself is being questioned in the public square. The pressure cooker starts to hiss. Meghan isn't an observer anymore, she's inside the blast radius. Silence suddenly feels dangerous. Doing nothing looks like surrender. So, a move is made, a letter goes to England. Direct, blunt, no softness, no humility. The message is crystal clear: we may have left our roles, but our children did not leave their bloodline. Archie and Lilibet must keep their titles, non-negotiable. This isn't a request, it's framed as a right. But the palace doesn't blink. No warm reply, no reassuring statement, no back-channel comfort. Instead, a short, sterile response appears on British radio. Administrative, cold, detached, further verification required, records under review, validity being assessed, and if discrepancies are found, adjustments will be made. That's it. No promises, no timeline, just procedure. And that silence, it's deafening. Because in the absence of reassurance, speculation explodes. Sources whisper. Commentators connect dots. Suddenly, the rumor isn't just titles might be reviewed, it's titles might be stripped entirely. Not just from the children, but from the Sussex line altogether. A clean severance. A final cut. For Harry and Meghan, this isn't PR anymore. This is existential. If their children lose titles, everything collapses. The moral positioning, the media deals, the carefully curated image of wronged royals still tethered to legitimacy. From their perspective, leaving royal duties was never supposed to mean erasure. And yet that's exactly what this feels like. Inside a closed room, tension snaps. Meghan doesn't whisper, she calculates. If silence costs us everything, then we make noise they can't ignore. Harry hesitates. He asks what she means. And she answers without blinking. A story so big, so radioactive, the palace is forced to choose. protect the titles, or face chaos. This is the moment the line disappears between defense and attack, and the counterstrike forms. What comes next isn't subtle, it's explosive. A new narrative begins circulating carefully, deliberately, powerfully. The claim? The royal family knew Harry carried genetic or health risks, that they pressured the couple into surrogacy, that Meghan was required to wear a fake pregnancy belly in public to preserve the illusion of natural succession. This isn't framed as a choice, it's framed as coercion. And that's the genius and danger of the strategy. It attacks the monarchy at its most sensitive nerve: ethics, transparency, humanity. The story paints an institution that prioritized image over dignity, control over consent. It reframes Meghan not as manipulator, but as victim of a cold, calculating machine. And then the pressure campaign goes public. Netflix. Oprah 2.0. 2 weapons, 1 message. Netflix becomes the vault of truths never told. Not just about life after leaving, but about what was done to them before. Oprah becomes the emotional detonator. Forced surrogacy, staged pregnancy, psychological harm, and the condition is stated plainly: keep the children's titles or this story continues. No vagueness, no retreat. A line is drawn, they add legal language: mental harm, ongoing pressure, damages, the possibility of compensation. Suddenly, this isn't just a family feud, it's a potential legal and ethical nightmare. But here's the pivot. The palace doesn't respond with emotion. No interviews, no outrage, no denials shouted through tabloids. They respond with paper, records, timelines, documents. They quietly release what always existed but was never spotlighted. No announcement board outside the palace because the Sussexes chose not to use it. Delayed birth announcements by choice. Private hospital by request. Limited disclosure agreed in advance. Even the adjustment on Archie's birth certificate is documented, explained administratively, presented without commentary. No interpretation, just facts. And then the palace does something far more lethal than denial. They ask one question: where is the evidence? Not insults, not accusations, just proof. Because once records are public, the rules change. This is no longer a battle of feelings, it's a test of substance. And suddenly, the burden shifts. Harry and Meghan had gone all in, and now the table is bare. Days pass, weeks, no documents, no medical records, no emails, no witnesses, no proof. The story, once roaring, stalls. And in the media world, silence isn't neutral, it's fatal. The energy drains, support hesitates, partners reassess, momentum dies. And in that quiet collapse, consequences begin. Softly, brutally, deals cool, projects stall, doors close without announcements. Harry starts to feel it first. The cost, the isolation, the realization that burning bridges didn't bring freedom, it brought exile. Meghan retreats inward. The mansion grows louder in its silence. Rage turns to regret. Confidence fractures. The public she once commanded moves on. And the cruel irony settles in. A master of narrative undone by the one thing she couldn't produce. Proof. This isn't a victory lap for the palace, it's something colder. A lesson. Institutions don't need to shout. They wait. They document. And when stories collide with records, only one survives. This story doesn't end with a verdict. It ends with withdrawal, with fading relevance, with silence. And sometimes silence is the loudest ending of all. The silence stretches, and that's when the real damage begins. Not with headlines, not with palace statements, but with absence. Phones stop ringing. Invitations quietly dry up. Meetings that were once urgent suddenly need to be rescheduled indefinitely. In Hollywood, momentum is oxygen, and for the first time since leaving the royal family, Harry and Meghan feel the air thinning. But Harry notices it first in the smallest ways. People who once nodded eagerly now hesitate. Conversations trail off when the topic shifts to the palace standoff. He starts replaying everything in his head step by step, wondering when protecting his children's titles turned into a full-scale war with no exit ramp. The accusations were heavy, too heavy, and without proof, they hang around his neck like stones. The thought creeps in slowly, painfully, maybe this fight cost more than it could ever give back. Meghan, meanwhile, sits with a different kind of reckoning. The strategy that once always worked worked, push harder, speak louder, control the narrative, has finally hit a wall that doesn't crack. The palace didn't attack her character, they didn't humiliate her publicly, they simply waited, laid out records, and stepped back. And in that space, her story withers. Not because everyone suddenly sides with the monarchy, but because people get tired of stories that stop delivering answers. Online, the tone shifts. It's no longer outrage or defense, it's indifference. Threads fade, commentators move on. The worst punishment in the media world isn't criticism, it's being forgotten. And that realization hits harder than any headline ever did. Meghan's silence, once strategic, now reads like defeat. Every day without evidence makes the original claims feel heavier, riskier, more reckless. Behind closed doors, the tension between Harry and Meghan thickens. The unspoken question sits between them: what if this went too far? Harry starts thinking about family, not roles, not titles, just human connection. The idea of repairing something, anything, with his father stops feeling like betrayal and starts feeling like survival. Meghan senses the shift, and to her, it feels like abandonment. The alliance that once burned hot now flickers under the weight of consequences neither of them fully calculated. And the palace? It doesn't chase them. It doesn't gloat. It simply continues operating as if the storm has passed. Records filed, procedures followed. The institution moves forward, untouched by emotion, untouched by spectacle. In contrast, Harry and Meghan are left standing still, surrounded by echoes of a battle that consumed everything and delivered nothing concrete in return. This is how it ends. Not with handcuffs, not with crowns falling, but with relevance slipping quietly through open fingers. A cautionary tale written not by decree, but by withdrawal. When stories challenge institutions built on documentation, the final currency isn't outrage, it's evidence. And without it, even the loudest narrative eventually collapses into silence. Time keeps moving, and that's the cruel part. There's no dramatic pause button, no rewind. The world doesn't wait for clarity, it simply shifts its attention. And as weeks turn into months, Harry and Meghan begin to realize that the fight they framed as moral and urgent has quietly slipped into the category of old news. Harry feels it most when he's alone, away from cameras, away from advisors, away from the language of strategy. He starts asking himself questions he avoided for years. What if leaving wasn't freedom, just another kind of cage? What if the anger he carried was never really resolved, only amplified by an audience that loved conflict more than healing? The palace didn't chase him, didn't beg him back, didn't try to crush him publicly, and somehow that restraint hurts more than retaliation ever could. Meghan, on the other hand, wrestles with something deeper and more personal: control. For the first time in her adult life, she can't steer the outcome. The narrative doesn't bend, the silence doesn't break, and the public, once emotionally invested, now watches from a distance with folded arms. She revisits old drafts, half-written statements, abandoned plans for one final reveal. But each time, doubt creeps in. Say more and risk making it worse. Say nothing and let the story die without redemption. Even allies grow cautious. Support becomes private, conditional, quiet. No one wants to stand too close to accusations that never materialized into proof. It's not cruelty, it's self-preservation. And that realization lands hard. The idea that power built on attention evaporates the moment certainty disappears. Behind the scenes, conversations change tone. Not about fighting back, but about damage control. About protecting the children from a legacy defined by controversy instead of stability. About whether winning a narrative battle is worth losing peace, trust, and future options. These aren't conversations meant for documentaries. They're heavy, uncomfortable, and deeply human. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the story rewrites itself without permission. What once looked like a brave stand begins to resemble overreach. What was framed as truth-telling starts to feel like escalation without an exit plan. Not because the palace declared it so, but because nothing followed the accusations. This is the final irony. In trying to force the institution to respond emotionally, Harry and Meghan underestimated its greatest strength: patience. Institutions survive by outlasting storms, not reacting to them. And when the noise fades, what remains is the record, and the silence of those who could not add to it. In the end, there's no dramatic verdict, just distance, just lessons learned too late, and the quiet understanding that some bridges, once burned publicly, don't collapse in flames. They erode slowly until there's nothing left to cross. So now the question isn't who won, it's who can live with what was lost along the way.